This video is a reconstruction of historical events. AI technology was used to create visual and audio content for illustrative purposes.
Welcome to today's story, one that changed the course of forensic science and criminal law forever. We're going back to London in 1905, to a case that tested a brand new method of crime detection, fingerprinting. This was the trial of Alfred and Albert Stratton, better known as the Deptford Murders. Their trial would not only decide their fate, but also determine whether fingerprints could be trusted in a court of law.
We appreciate your likes and subscriptions. It helps us create more content for you.
On the morning of March 27, 1905, a young worker named William Jones arrived at Chapman's Oil and Color Shop on Deptford High Street. The shop was oddly closed. With a neighbor's help, he entered and found a horrifying scene. Inside lay the body of 71-year-old shop manager Thomas Farrow, beaten to death. Upstairs, his wife Anne, 65, was found gravely injured. She would die just a few days later in hospital. Police quickly determined the motive was robbery. An empty cash box was found, which should have held around 12 pounds, today worth nearly 2,000. Two crude masks made from stockings suggested two attackers. And though the crime itself was simple, a robbery turned violent, it would become the backdrop for a scientific revolution. The investigation moved on two tracks: traditional detective work and something completely new. Detectives canvassed the area. Witnesses described two men leaving the shop around 7:30 that morning. One wore a brown suit and cap, the other a blue suit with a bowler hat. Some recognized the men as Alfred and Albert Stratton, local brothers with rough reputations. But the evidence was shaky. Some witnesses couldn't identify them in a police lineup. That's when another piece of the puzzle emerged. Alfred's girlfriend, Annie Cromartie, told police he had asked her for old stockings before the crime. Afterward, he returned with a suspicious amount of money and asked her to burn his coat. These were strong clues, but still circumstantial. The case could have collapsed. Then came the breakthrough. At the crime scene, Assistant Commissioner Melvin McNaughton spotted a greasy thumbprint on the cash box. He personally sent it to Scotland Yard's new fingerprint bureau. There, Inspector Charles Collins compared the mark to thousands of records. It didn't match any known criminal. But when Alfred and Albert were arrested, Alfred's right thumbprint was found to be an exact match. For the first time in Britain, a fingerprint tied a murder suspect directly to a crime scene. In May 1905, the Stratton brothers stood trial at the Old Bailey. This wasn't just their trial, it was also the trial of fingerprinting. At the time, fingerprints were new and untested in serious cases. The old system, known as Bertillonage, used body measurements to identify criminals. Many judges and lawyers doubted that a smudge on a box could condemn a man to death. Some even warned Scotland Yard it would become the laughingstock of Europe. Prosecutor Sir Richard Muir knew the risk. The witness evidence was weak, and the motive alone wasn't enough. So he built his case around one thing: Alfred Stratton's thumbprint. The star witness was Inspector Charles Collins. Calm and confident, he explained to the jury that in his career he had examined nearly 1 million fingerprints and had never found two alike. Then, using enlarged photographs, he pointed out the ridges and loops on the cash box print and Alfred's own thumb. Side by side, the match was undeniable. The defense tried to fight back. They hired Dr. John Garson, once head of Scotland Yard's old measurement office. But Garson's credibility collapsed when it was revealed he had offered his services to both sides of the case, whoever would pay him. To the jury, the choice was clear. Collins was a dedicated expert, Garson was not to be trusted. With no strong defense left, the fingerprint evidence stood unchallenged. After just 2 hours of deliberation, the jury returned with a verdict: guilty. Both Alfred and Albert Stratton were sentenced to death. On May 23, 1905, the brothers were executed at Wandsworth Prison. Their conviction marked the first time in Britain that fingerprint evidence had been the central proof in a capital case. It was a turning point, not only for the Strattons, but for the future of forensic science. The case of the Stratton brothers cemented fingerprints as a cornerstone of modern policing. Scotland Yard's Fingerprint Bureau, just 4 years old at the time, now had its credibility sealed by a dramatic courtroom success. From that moment on, fingerprints were accepted as powerful, scientific proof. The case quickly influenced police forces across the British Empire and beyond. Within a few decades, fingerprinting became standard practice worldwide. But the case also left deeper questions. Could such evidence really be considered infallible? Was it right to send two men to the gallows based on a single thumbprint? At the time, the answers didn't matter. The science was accepted. A new era of forensic certainty had begun. The Deptford murders were tragic, but out of that brutality came a milestone in legal history, the moment fingerprints became trusted evidence in court. A single print, a smudge on a cash box, changed the way crimes would be investigated forever.